This is another big lie. The second wave of migration, it begins by 1960s again, when there was a military junta in Myanmar, in the neighboring country. The military regime was falling hard on the people on that part of the world. So many of them fled the region and took shelter in India. By that time, the government of India was kind enough, and the government of Manipur was also kind enough to give them refugee status and let them settle in Manipur as refugees since 1960s. And we have all the Darbar resolutions, we have all the Darbar records, where the then MP of Manipur, who is a Naga, indigenous Naga, Mr. R. Swisha, writing a letter to the government of India to grant sanctions for the maintenance of Kuki refugees being given shelter in Manipur, part of Kongkham Thana, Chachat, and several other places. Therefore, the second wave of Kuki migrations are Kuki refugees. They should not be, get angry in that, because it is their true identity. The second wave of Kuki migrations are Kuki refugees since 1960s. And there is one last, third wave of Kuki migration, that is since 1990s unofficially, and since 2008 officially. Why I am saying officially? Because by 2008, all the Chin Kuki narco-terrorist militant groups, almost it starts with 18 groups, and now it's 25 of them, having a political dialogue with government of India. And the government of India committed a big mistake not to understand the duplicity, the politics, the dirty politics being played by the so-called Chin Kuki narco-terrorist groups. Government of India thought that this is a kind of appeasement policy. We should bring them on the negotiating table, and we should disarm them and give them rehabilitation so that they can join the mainstream Indian citizen. But actually they are not coming in to sign a political dialogue to follow in that line. They were just trying to get some immunity from the Indian armies and the state forces attacking them, so that they can operate freely in those Kuki dominated hill areas. And they have successfully do that. They have successfully did that, doing that today. They have interfered, they have influence in all the administrative affairs. Don't you come across the videos where one of their projected MLAs, the wife of one of the chairmen of the militant groups, becoming elected as an MLA, and the celebration was firing blank shots of AK-47 on the streets of Saikul. This is how they celebrate the democracy of India. This is how they celebrate when they won an election. As per the Constitution of India, shooting AK-47s in the sky. Since that time, they have successfully inserted 5 of the politicians to the Manipur politics, state affairs. And they have also succeeded in that. By that time, every migrants from across the borders is being invited, give them shelter, teach them some 2-3 Manipuri dialects, making fake Aadhaar cards for them, making fake entry to the electoral card, converting them to the bona fide citizen of India. Then they started planting that population all over the Manipur vulnerable areas. This is their plan. And today, they have enough power and enough resources to mobilize all these activities. Their dream to bifurcate certain portion of the state of Manipur and make it a new Kuki land, merge it with Mizoram, later merge it with the Chin state of Myanmar, certain parts of Sagaing division of Myanmar and make a new cookie land called the Zhou land or the Jalengam. And this has been already published as a book by their armed leaders like P.S. Hawkins and so many other leaders. And this is their ultimate political aspirations. So what happens? In this recent violence, Meitei has nothing to do. Meitei innocent peoples has no role to play. Even we, COCOMI, has nothing to do. Our responsibility, our involvement in this violence came in only when they started demanding for a separate administration. Because COCOMI's position is very clear, it's very firm, that COCOMI stands to defend and protect the territorial integrity of Manipur, no matter what. We stand for that. And we have been standing by this commitment since the time we started, working as a social activist 18, 19 years back. Therefore, what happens? The state government, considering all the underlying situations, understanding the insecurity that we are going to have in future, the major indigenous people and the Naga indigenous people have realized that one day these illegal immigrants, these refugees turned citizens, and those new settlers are going to collude together and come up with a very big force and wage a war against us someday, so that they can snatch away certain portion of Manipur's territory for their own demand and purposes. We have that sense of insecurities some 3-4 years back. And that is why the United Naga Council, the apex of the indigenous Naga brethren, and the COCOMI has come in together, had several rounds of discussion and resolved to demand for the national registers of citizens, so that we could identify all the illegal immigrants who have come in, sneak in, trespasses in since 1961. Identify them, detect them, and keep them in their right position, keep them in their right place. So we resolved and pursued, submitted a memorandum to the Home Minister of India, to the Prime Minister, and even to the Chief Minister of Manipur, that the indigenous people of Manipur urgently need some system, some mechanism, some kind of law to enact and control and contain this serious threat coming in from the illegal immigrants and all sort of demographic impact that we are facing today. Otherwise, the indigenous Nagas and the Meiteis will have a very different, very difficult future, very insecure future. Our grandchildren might become, a kind of minority in our own land. Therefore, considering the genuineness, considering the importance and seriousness of our demand, the union government has accepted for the state government to enact a law that will detect and detain or control all those illegal immigrants who has come in and settled in Manipur since 1961. This is one very important law the state government has already enacted and adopted. Number one. Number two, when the new government of BJP came in Manipur in the year 2017, the Chief Minister of Manipur has also initiated another law, another very important law, which he called it the war on drugs. That is also very important because, as we all know, Manipur has become the new golden triangle in Southeast Asia. The then golden triangle of the Khunsa region in the bordering no man's land area of Thailand, Myanmar and Laos, which has been destroyed or closed down 10 years ago, has now shifted in the territory of Manipur from the Shan state of Myanmar. And every technology, every resources has already reached Manipur, and under the protection and under the management of those tin cookie narco-terrorist militant groups, they have been institutionalizing, they have been, rooting the industry of narco-terrorism since the signing of 2008 agreement. And the government of India was turning a blind eye because of that suspension of operation agreement. Then what happened? The very new law enacted by the state government, the law called war on drugs, there was a very aggressive drive against poppy cultivation, drug trafficking, and drug peddling people. There was huge arrests, seizures of drugs worth thousand crores. Every one of you would be surprised to know, over the past 5 years, since 2017 till today, the state government has seized and arrested drugs worth 7,887 crore rupees. And these are the drugs seized and arrested momentarily, maybe once in a month, twice a month. But that is not the frequency of transit. That is not the frequency of drugs being trafficked from across the border. The drugs might be trafficking every day, every night. And because of only few intelligence inputs and informations, those drugs were seized and arrested momentarily. And that drugs also even worth 7,887 crore rupees. As per some of our research sources, it is being said that the annual turnover from opium poppy cultivation itself in Manipur is worth 50,000 crore rupees annually. And that is the amount of money which is being used by those narco-terrorist militant groups to wage war on us. Those are the money, those are the fund, those are the resources. And one last law. I have already mentioned 2 laws. There is one last law enacted by the state government. There is the law to protect and conserve the forest of Manipur. Geographically, Manipur is a hill area. The so-called the Valley of Imphal, the Manipur Valley. The altitude of the Manipur Valley is 720 meters above sea level. How much is the altitude of Bangalore? 200? How much? 300 maybe? The Bangalore Plateau? Even if we stand here and if you want to look at the Imphal Valley, you need to raise your neck because it is right up in the top of the hills. Therefore, the environment security of the whole state is determined by the hill forest. Every drop of water that we have in the valley comes in from the surrounding hill areas. That is why our forefathers have set a very strict rule to respect, to worship, our forests, our hills, it's being believed that we also came down from the top of the mountain called the Kovru, Awang Kovru Ashupa, and settled in the valley thousands years back. And every year, till today, in the month of April and in the month of December, we have a ritual, we have a tradition to visit the place where our forefathers first came out of civilization. The peak of the Kovru mountain and the peak of the Thangjing mountain. This is a custom for us. But since the arrival of the Kuki immigrants, they have been settling in the foothills areas of the vast Kovru mountain range. And today, they have destroyed almost 70% of the forest areas of the Mount Kovru. And they have even started dictating and regulating the Meitei's traditional practice to climb the Kovru mountain and worship our forefathers. And it has given a big threat to the existence of the Meitei by those refugees, those illegal immigrants. Just imagine if the people of India is being restricted from visiting the Amarnath Yatra, from visiting the Mount Kailash, how will the people of India react when such kind of things being committed by some local people from the foothills areas of the Great Himalayas? How will you react? How will the people of India react? Likewise, but we have been tolerating that since 2018, that we have to convince them, we have to understand that. But the demolition that they have carried out in our forest has given a climatic disaster, a huge environmental impact to our survival. We are now experiencing an extreme rise in the temperature of Manipur Valley. We are facing frequent drought, limited rainfalls, and now our agriculture is now at the brink of, facing another disaster and calamities. Considering the gravity of this situation, the state government has decided to enact the Forest Act of 1927 properly, and they started continuing surveys and eviction drive from those settlers, illegal settlers in the Kuki dominated areas, in the forest areas of Manipur. So what happens? The war on drugs, the State Population Commission to detect and detain illegal immigrants, and the eviction drive over the forest areas. These three laws of the state has already threatened the very objective, the very underlying political aspirations of the narco-terrorist groups, where they want to establish a narco-terrorist state inside the territory of Manipur, and they have been investing in that line for the past 25 years. And it is about to be completely destroyed by the three laws that the state government has enacted. But they don't blame on all these three laws, because they have no reason to, defend and justify these three laws, because they have been coming in illegally inside the territory from across the border. They have been becoming a citizen of India from the back door without the due procedures of the law as per the Citizenship Act, and they are likely to be exposed, every individual of them. And their illegal encroachment in the forest areas has also been started evicting by the state forces and the forest department from time to time. So their investment, the 25 years of investment, planting populations, empowering narco-terrorist armed militants, expanding the forest areas for poppy cultivations, all these illegal activities have started being completely, destroying by the 3 laws that the state government has enacted. And they cannot go to the Supreme Court, they cannot go to the High Court, they cannot do any legitimate protest to not, carry out that three legitimate laws. So what did they decide? They decided that laws is not going to take our side. We cannot use the law anymore. So our only last resort, our only last option is nothing, but we have to take these issues to the political level. So what are the means to take it to the political level? Number one, organize the people movement. So they mobilized all those illegal immigrants which they brought in from across the border. They bring them on the streets. They come out with a very fake reason to organize a public agitation, which they call it Meitei's demand for scheduled tribe. Meitei demanding for scheduled tribe has nothing to do with their scheduled tribe status. This is something which is to be dealt by the Ministry of Minorities and Tribal Affairs. But they use that very reason because Nagas also have some opinion on that. Meitei's demand for scheduled tribe. So they just convinced the Naga brethren, bring him to the board and took out a public protest and agitation. Then what happened? They planned, let's make this public agitation violent. Let's make this agitation bloody. Let's make this agitation anti-Meitei, because we cannot protest just to the government. We have to drag in, we have to entangle and let involve all the Meitei peoples also, so that we know Meitei will definitely retaliate. Meiteis are the majority. When they retaliate, we will be having more victims. We will be suffering more. We are minority, and Meitei will be retaliating in such a way that we can play the card of minorities. We can play the card of Christian minorities. We can play the card of tribal minorities. And we can, draw the sympathy of the whole nation in the name of tribal minorities, in the name of Christian, in the name of Kuki minorities. So this is their strategy, their pre-planned strategy. And they carried out that very incident on 3rd May. They burned the tires, kept it to the pillar of that centenary gate. Then they make a phone calls to the people who are in the protest rally. Then the whole people who gathered in the protest rally travel for around 13 kilometers to reach the most nearest Meitei village, and they start vandalizing all the shops and houses. They started torching down and razing down all the houses, 70, 80 of the houses. In the first 15 minutes, they have completely razed it down. And as they planned, as they predicted, by 6:37 p.m., Meitei started retaliating in the valley. And many of the Chin Kuki minority people who were settled in the Imphal Valley, they fall victim to that retaliation. And right from the next day, they started plotting the agenda of a minority card, started drawing sympathy, saying that, demonizing the Meiteis, and saying that we fall victim to the Meiteis, discriminations and atrocities. This is their first plan, and today we are falling to that line. Therefore, we feel that we have no agenda at all. Even today, there is no agenda for the Meitei. We don't have any demand to be, put up to the government level. It is only them who have been demanding demand after demand. So now I think COCOMI thinks that they have crossed certain limits on how they drag in the innocent people from both sides, from the Kuki side and from the Meitei side, who has nothing to do with this violence. They let victimized 60,000 people from both sides of the community. 10,000s of houses being completely razed and destroyed. All the Meitei settlements in the hill areas, 100% evicted and ethnically cleansed. But you will be surprised to know there are still Kuki settlements and Kuki houses still intact inside the Imphal Valley, and nobody touched them. Meitei has been living with 34 ethnic communities for the past 2,000-3,000 years together. And we never try to impose any sort of Meitei agenda to any of the ethnic communities. There are ethnic communities numbering around just 630. Population only 630. Endangered ethnic communities of Manipur. They are known as Tarao. There are Chothe, whose population is hardly 3,000. There are Aimol, whose population is only 7,000. There are Chiru, there are Kom, there are Maring. Small population, whose number is not even 10,000, 20,000, 30,000. Despite this, Meitei has maintained the idea of coexistence in harmony for so many thousand years, and we have no problem living in together. But this time, when the Chin Kuki narco-terrorists has deliberately, intentionally started waging war on the Meitei people, the Meitei people is helpless. We have to defend our villages. We have to defend our lives. We have to defend the properties of the Meitei villages. So there is some kind of exchange of infighting between the two communities. Meitei is fighting out of compulsion, but Kukis are fighting deliberately with an agenda. And now they have crossed the limit. Even today morning, some Kuki narco-terrorist militants attacked one family who were sleeping inside their home. They break the door, enter inside the room, and one person, his son and grandson, all three of them have been butchered and killed. Today in the early morning of 3 a.m. The news came in to us and we couldn't sleep the whole night today. These things are happening. And when the Meitei villages and the volunteers try to retaliate, the Assam Rifles come into the middle and block the Meitei population from attacking again. So we start having a sense that the government of India, willingly or unwillingly, there seems to be giving a legal protection to those suspension of operation armed Kuki narco-terrorist militants. There seems to be legitimizing their existence in Manipur, despite writing a letter to the government of Manipur that one of the leaders is from Myanmar. So how long are we going to tolerate this? How long are we going to face this? If these things is going to continue for another week, I don't think Meitei will have enough patience to wait till that time. And by that time, if the Meitei started initiating a counter-offensive attack to the Kuki population, we can imagine what could be the level of disaster that we will be facing. We don't want that kind of situation at any cost. We want to maintain peace. We want to restore normalcy. Having said that, we also need to identify and detect all those illegal immigrants, all those people who become the citizen of India from the back door.